The United States is unique in that the country is made up of people from various ethnic and cultural backgrounds. Each immigrant grouping has impacted the cultural identity of the United States. Each region of the United States has its own culture, which includes its own linguistic patterns and regional norms. Culture refers to the patterns, behaviors, and beliefs of all products of particular groups of people that are passed on from generation to generation. Cultural tendency impacts the way children participate in education. To engage students effectively in the learning process, teachers must know their students and their academic abilities individually rather than relying on racial or ethnic stereotypes. What we view as acceptable and normal in our own culture might not fit into what is normal or acceptable for others. For example, some cultures and familiarities are controlled through male interactions. We as teachers in the United States need to be sensitive and understand that this familial tie is different from our own. Even the most standard curriculum decides whose history is examined and what books are worth reading. Many people note that our schools are representative of different cultures, but our curriculums are not. We examine the study of the predominant culture and continue the study of Caucasian influence history in many places. In the book The Teaching Learning Process by Nathaniel Cantor, Cantor examines the idea that public elementary schools, high schools, and colleges create a uniform way of learning. Since the writing of his book, schools still function in the same manner, and teachers still teach the same textbooks and examine the same materials. Curriculum and text selections should include different voices and ways of knowing, experiencing, and understanding life. This way, students can find values in their own voices, histories, and cultures. A family's socioeconomic status is directly linked to the student's education. For example, an affluent family will live in a nice neighborhood and attend a school close to where they live that will benefit from their family's socioeconomic status. Some families are at a disadvantage and may live in low-income areas. Their students may be subjected to negative outcomes of the family's economic disadvantagement. According to the NCES, 40% of Pennsylvania's schools service students who are low income. Poverty distribution is likely to affect students who are considered ethnic minorities. In 2015, 36% of African American or Black students were considered living below the poverty line. The next highest ethnic groups are Native American and Alaskan Indian, followed by Hispanic. These students will face substantial hardships when compared to students that do not live in low-income areas. Among the top issues or concerns are hunger and crime. This trend is likely to continue, and according to the statistics, Latino and Asian Americans are projected to be the fastest growing groups of adolescents. Students may fall into one ethnic group. However, in the United States as educators, we need to remember that large ethnic groups are incredibly diverse. For example, in Spanish-speaking ethnic groups, Mexican Americans, Cuban Americans, Puerto Ricans, and students who identify as Dominican all share a Hispanic or Latino background, but will most likely utilize different dialects of language, celebrate holidays in different fashions, interact with families and friends differently, and eat different cultural foods. In addition to all of these things, students who come from ethnic minority groups and are from low socioeconomic backgrounds have fewer resources when compared to Caucasian students from good socioeconomic backgrounds. These students are less likely to receive an education from experienced teachers and will attend schools that contain historically low resources. Schools in urban settings have a high student-to-teacher ratio, and many outside observers notice that teachers use threatening languages when disciplining students. It's important to note that 90% of teachers in the United States come from Caucasian backgrounds and teach students who are from differing economic and ethnic groups. Diversity can be defined as the sum of the ways that people are both alike and different. The dimensions of diversity include race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, language, culture, religion, mental and physical ability, class, and immigration status. Historically, economic and social differences have produced both prejudicial and legitimate differences among various social groups. Recognizing and respecting these differences are imperative and an important aspect with regard to getting along with those who do not share commonalities. Most commonly known as Brown v. Board of Education, this landmark Supreme Court case desegregated schools. Before the case, schools in the South were segregated based off of color, and students who were African American were sent to schools that were considered separate but equal. This case did away with the idea of separate but equal, and in addition to the cultural implications this case set, it set the groundwork for schools to integrate not only based off of color of a student's skin, but also implement special education programs. So, Brown v. Board of Education became a landmark Supreme case for students with regard to diversity and ethnicity, culture, as well as exceptionality. The first wave that will be examined is the beginning of the Asian American immigration. Japanese and Chinese immigration started in the 1860s. These immigrants came to the United States through the West Coast. They primarily took jobs that dealt with agriculture and the creation of the railroad. Wealthy Chinese merchants in California established academias and schools during the 1880s and 1890s that students could be educated in a specialized manner that allowed for a control of education. Japanese immigrants also started schools, but they assimilated quickly into American society. For this reason, Japanese students attended American schools and interacted with American students before Chinese students did. On the East Coast, immigrants were from Southern and Eastern Europe. Initially, these culturally and ethnic groups moved into ethnically polarized areas. However, many people changed their names in order to sound more anglicized. Public officials who represented the original majority felt disdain towards new cultures that moved into the United States and felt that these people had criminal tendencies and would become politically radicalized. Immigrants educated themselves by taking evening classes to learn how to speak English. By 1906, the U.S. government required English competency as a part of the naturalization process for the citizenship. Schools on the East Coast became places where students learned about American culture. This was also the first time that Congress in the United States became interested in the process of immigration and its impact on education in the nation. In 1908, the Senate's Committee on Immigration compiled statistics from 37 cities. They found that there were over 60 different nationalities living within large cities. Schools were overcrowded due to the massive amounts of immigrants. Many students were denied entry to schools, and literacy and math tests were required for acceptance. Most students received primary school educations, but after 5th grade were sent to work so their families could have additional income. Completing high school and attending college would not become normal among minority groups until World War II ended. In our current immigration climate, we see an influx of immigrants that come from all over the world. Primarily, we examine areas like Mexico, the Middle East, and countries in Africa as places where the majority of immigrants come from. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, by grade 12, the white-black achievement gap in reading was larger in 2013 by 30 points than it had been in 1992, 24 points. However, the white-Hispanic achievement gap saw no significant difference. By grade 12, Caucasian students scored much higher when compared to African American and Hispanic students in mathematics. Asian students were reported to have the most absences, while American Indian and Alaskan natives reported to have the least. Asian students reported to be entered into the most advanced placement classes when compared to that of ethnic and cultural backgrounds. Black male students were reported to have a high percentage of suspensions, while American Indians and Alaskan natives reported to have the highest amount of threatening behaviors, including bringing weapons to school. The highest dropout rate amongst all students is Latino and Hispanic males. In an attempt to eliminate issues related to lower income areas and marginalized groups, the School District of Philadelphia has developed the following goals: to pursue academic excellence for all children, to assist students to develop the necessary social and linguistic skills needed to communicate effectively in a multilingual global society, to enable students to develop a deep multicultural understanding that reflects sensitivity toward all, and in seeking to ensure educational equity and justice for all, multiracial, multicultural, and gender education will be infused throughout all aspects of the educational process. Each of our students comes to the classroom with a unique view and interpretation of the world that is shaped by their varying backgrounds. The ways they learn, interact socially, and understand the importance of academics differs and is influenced by their cultures, ethnicities, socioeconomic statuses, sexual orientation, gender identity, and age. To be effective, educators must acknowledge these differences and modify the curriculum to be encouraging and accepting of diversity. The curriculum should also be modified so that it is representative of the students in the classroom. This includes instructional modifications to make the material accessible to all students, as well as the inclusion of material that shows a variety of cultures in non-stereotypical and positive, progressive ways. It is important that educators understand and recognize the risk factors related to different sociocultural groups. The backgrounds of our students affects their access to quality education. An ongoing issue our nation has faced is providing high-quality education for all students, especially those who are currently underserved by the educational system. These students are largely students of color, low-income students, language learners, and students in rural and urban areas. It is important to note that the demographics of our students and the increasing diversity in our schools is not the problem. It is the quality of education and access to education. Researchers have increasingly concluded that although many major factors influence educational outcomes, teacher quality is a major factor. Hans and Guzman reviewed research to examine the importance of and techniques for preparing teachers for a diverse population of students. In the review, they highlighted several important factors related to effective teachers. These included teachers' attitudes towards diversity, teacher approaches to diversity, and equity pedagogy. Regarding teachers' attitudes towards diversity, Hollins and Guzman noted that research found that while many teachers are open to diversity, they feel uncomfortable in diverse settings because of concerns regarding how students will perceive them as teachers, instructional methods for diverse students, and dealing with attitudes of intolerance. Researchers recommend that students address teacher concerns through discussion and training on diversity in the classroom. For example, ESL students may be struggling with comprehension but are not learning disabled. For these types of students, it is important that educators understand that it takes time for students to become linguistically competent in any language. They may need modifications in the classroom to comprehend the language and develop fluency. We are each prone to believing that our own set of beliefs and values are the right ones. According to current research on teachers' attitudes and approaches to diverse educational settings, teachers new to urban schools tend to bring firmly held beliefs about teaching in urban schools that were partial to their own educational and life experiences. The conclusion of this research highlights an important need for teacher awareness of their own biases and further education and training for teachers on how different backgrounds affect learning styles and access to education. The first step in creating a classroom that embraces sociocultural diversity is recognizing our own biases. By becoming more self-aware, we are better able to delve into the cultural assumptions and stereotypes each of our students faces every day. It is important that we know and understand our students. Students are often mislabeled as learning disabled or lower functioning because of their differences. This is something that by education and awareness, teachers can prevent. As previously noted, the diverse backgrounds of our students strongly shapes the ways they interact with the academic curriculum. Each student learns differently, and instruction should be modified to accommodate their varying learning styles. Student performance is also strongly affected by self-esteem and motivation. When a student does not feel understood or accepted within the classroom, they are at higher risk for developing low self-esteem and consequently motivation, resulting in academic failure. Due to stereotyping, students of minority backgrounds are particularly vulnerable to this effect. To eliminate this likelihood, it is vital that teachers practice and teach acceptance. Acceptance and respect of other cultures and diversity should be an expectation of all students and staff within the classroom. A widely researched field and popular approach to addressing sociocultural diversity and increasing acceptance of all types of differences is the multicultural education approach. Stemming from the civil rights movement of the 1960s, which called for equality and social justice for people of color and women, multicultural education aims to create equal education opportunity for all students and close the gap in academic achievement between mainstream students and students from underrepresented groups. Multicultural education advocates the belief that students and their experiences should be at the center of education. Multicultural education focuses on ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender, religion, disability, sexual orientation, and any other form of difference. In Review of Multicultural Education, Lads and Billings examined research exploring the field. In conclusion, Lads and Billings supported that areas of multicultural education had meaningful impact on the academic achievement of students from minority backgrounds. Areas found to be of high importance included teachers' beliefs about students, curriculum content and materials, and instructional approaches. When implementing a multicultural education perspective, schools and educators should be mindful to ensure the following as they are vital to the success of the multicultural education approach. Educators should be passionate about helping all of their students learn and hold all students to the same expectations. Their curriculum should be representative of a diverse group of students. It should be reformed so that students explore and perceive issues, concepts, and experiences from varying perspectives from different sociocultural groups. Materials and textbooks should include and represent backgrounds and experiences from diverse ethnic and cultural views. Materials should also be free of stereotypes and biases that marginalize the experiences of people from different backgrounds. The culture of the school should embrace and support positive aspects of diversity. This includes things such as the fair treatment of students and diverse bulletin board or picture displays. School counselors should support and encourage all students across backgrounds to strive and pursue their dreams. They should assist all students fairly when guiding them through educational, social, and career choices. Equity pedagogy has been a popular and supported topic of current research. Equity pedagogy exists when teachers employ methods and materials that support the academic achievement of students from diverse and minority backgrounds. The curriculum, instruction, and materials should be based on the students' backgrounds, attend to oppressed and underserved groups, and foster self-determination. Utilizing materials that represent a diverse range of cultures in non-stereotypical and positive ways helps eliminate prejudice and increase acceptance in the classroom. As previously noted, students come from the classroom with a variety of backgrounds, sets of beliefs and experiences, cultural contexts, and worldviews. To create an inclusive environment, it is important that the teacher dissect the dynamics of the classroom, how diversity affects their classroom, and modify instructional methods accordingly. As noted by the National Association for the Education of Young Children, all children are cognitively, linguistically, and emotionally connected to the language and culture of their home. Their experiences shape their communicative and cognitive styles and aptitudes, as well as their learning needs. Being knowledgeable of each student's home life and experiences allows the teacher to prepare and implement strategies that allow students full access to the curriculum and maximizes their progress. Communicating expectations regarding acceptance and tolerance of differences is extremely important. Bullying in any fashion should not be tolerated. This should be understood by all students and staff in the classroom. By 2060, the U.S. Census Bureau predicts that the United States will become a plurality nation. This means that the nation will not be identifiable by one majority race. Similar concepts of school diversity and integration are shifting. For the most part, the predictive future of the school's ethnic and cultural makeup will follow that of current research. Students who are considered third and fourth generation American may only feel a symbolic connection to their culture and ethnicity. They may be related to their familial or ancestral ties, have a love and pride for their family's country of origin, but will never know or know little about the country's day-to-day operations, including the native language of the country, or know any family members that still live there. In this aspect, students will tend to become more secularized and Americanized. Many scholars have noted that globalization and technology will lead to an increased interconnectedness with regard to social learning in and out of the classroom. Technology has created an ease to connect students directly to the people that they are studying. For example, a student studying the French language can email a student in France to directly learn about their culture. This would allow a teacher to create a more inclusive study of culture and ethnicity and have students understand different viewpoints and perspectives which differ from that of the Caucasian narrative that is normally presented in schools. Researchers have examined that the future of education and cultural integration can be built upon using 5 essential components of multicultural education. Content integration, where materials, concepts, and values vary to display a variety of teaching and learning styles that help involve students from different cultural backgrounds and engage in deeper cognitive experience. Knowledge construction, a recognition that knowledge is socially constructed and created in the minds of humans, which helps them create and explain their own experiences. In this aspect, knowledge becomes a primary aspect of a multicultural education experience. Equity pedagogy, involving teachers altering their methods to accommodate various cultural differences of students' backgrounds. Teachers who can engage a student in altered teaching methods will stimulate academic achievement across cultures. Prejudice reduction. In this aspect, teachers have a responsibility to help shift students' attitudes towards differences with regard to race and ethnicity. Teachers must teach a tolerance about religion, physical and mental abilities, as well as sexual preference. This will ultimately empower the school culture to shift towards acceptance. Empowering students. Educators must examine the structures that have been predetermined and empower families and students to develop culturally empowering students.